Great. Well, I'm very pleased to be joined by Dirk Jacobson, who is a natural dentist, or would that be the right term? Biological dentist? What is it?
Yeah, well, there are different terms. There's holistic dentists, biological, functional dentists, and all these things are somehow the umbrella for being a holistic dentist, yes. So.
You've been telling me earlier on how you've started a website to allow people to get second opinions that are unbiased from a dentist who knows. Can you explain that? Because that sounded such a good idea to me.
Well, yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that, Clive. The thing is, I have been practicing dentist for more than 30 years. I graduated in Hamburg, Germany, some 30-something years ago, and practiced in Germany. Then I met my wife Laura, and we went to Australia, so I had to resit the exams in Australia. And I've been practicing dentistry in a small boutique holistic surgery until probably COVID started 1.5 years ago, that's where we left Australia. And I opened an online business which is called DentoDecoded. And what I provide is information. I have an educational part on the website where I tackle some subjects like amalgam removals and all the things that are important in dentistry, where I offer some in-depth analysis on things that are important in dentistry today. And I offer consultation, unbiased consultation for people who want a second opinion. So I offer this service with video consultation. People can send me their X-rays, digital X-rays. Everything is digital these days. And the idea behind it is that with my experience also in holistic dentistry, I can offer a service for people who are in doubt, who have been in the dental chair often. They have been offered a very expensive treatment plan, for example, or some maybe one-track kind of solution to their dental problem, which is often they feel being railroaded into, because often it's like a very intimidating situation. The patient opens their mouth and the dentist sits kind of above them and tells them, this is the best way to deal with it, and this is the treatment plan, and yes, these will be the costs or whatever it is. And often patients feel like they just would like to have a second opinion from someone who is unbiased. And my position is, because I am unbiased, I will not earn from my recommendations or the discussions that I have with the patient. And the good thing is that the patient or the client, they can send me their X-rays. I have an analysis of the X-rays, and we can discuss in a very comfortable at-home situation where there's no pressure on anyone, and we can talk through the different solutions that are available for the patient. Sometimes I agree with the dentist, sometimes I feel like that would be a more beneficial way to go about things, and maybe even more cost effective, and then the patient or the client can then decide which way they want to go and discuss, have questions. Sometimes it's like they really don't know what's going on, because often the patient is left alone with trying to work out, so what am I encountering here? What sort of treatment is it? I don't understand what it means. I don't understand what it means to have an implant, or what a root canal is all about, if that's the choice that I'm going for or not. So yeah, so my position is I'm unbiased. I don't earn from my recommendations because I'm not the hands-on dentist. I can only give my opinion what I think would be beneficial or not.
So let me ask you, what percentage of dentists are actually crooks and are just doing it for the money, and what percentage are pure psychopaths?
That's a tough question to answer, Clive, because I don't think that I think the problem is, and that's in dentistry as much as in modern medicine, is that the provider somehow earns off the misfortune of the patient who is sick. So there's somehow, it's a strange setup. It should be somehow like an old Chinese tradition where the provider is actually paid for if the patient stays healthy, and not from that the provider, the doctor or the dentist, is earning from the misery of the patient. The more sick, the more I earn, and the better the treatment I provide, the more money I get. So this is where people are biased often, and this is where dentists and doctors often fall into the trap. Like, well, if I provide this kind of service, I might earn even more than if I provide something else, which might be even as good as the more expensive one. So there is often it's a difficult situation. Now, to classify them as psychopaths or crooks is a judgment that I would not want to give, although there are clearly crooks out there, like in public life and in any profession. But I can't give you a percentage. No.
Okay. Another thing I wondered was the X-ray equipment that dentists have. It must vary from the latest, most incredible imaging equipment compared to something really old-fashioned. How many dentists have the right equipment, the good equipment?
Okay, there's different equipment out there. So there's basically three things. There's the intraoral equipment that is out there, and most dentists, I do believe more than 50, 60, 70% by now, have digital equipment. So that is if you take a picture, for example, of a single tooth. That is, if you come to a dentist, for example, and you have a toothache, then that's essential to do that, to take one small picture. They have relatively low radiation exposure today. That's one sort. Then there's a full mouth X-ray, which is also digital these days, which is essential. So if I have seen patients, I have the basic treatment or the basic investigations that we need to do was always that I took a couple of the small pictures because they are way more precise and detailed, and the full mouth X-ray. These days we have 3D pictures out there, which are way more sophisticated. It's a very expensive machine, which costs probably a couple of $100,000 or maybe £100,000 these days. So this is, not everybody has this equipment right now. Also, there's one thing, that the radiation exposure is way higher than for the two machines that I earlier mentioned. So you get better results, you get a 3D image, so you get the whole volume of the bone, not just a two-dimensional picture, but you get, for example, you can zoom into the bone and you get the whole skull. You can see it on the screen. It's a wonderful thing, but you have to take into account that the radiation exposure is way higher. So you don't want to do that for kids if you don't have to. Yeah. So those are the different equipments available now, and the majority has the first one. Not everyone has the full mouth X-ray, which I find essential. I do that for almost all of the patients. And the 3D one, the cone beam one, is not everyone has it, but every dentist has the opportunity to refer someone to have this X-ray done if needed. So those are the different sort of X-rays. I have a video on my website DentoDecoded where I talk about these things more in detail and what I think is reasonable to have, because many patients, they go to the dentist, they are really concerned about having an X-ray done because of the radiation exposure. But on the other hand, for dentists, it's absolutely essential to take an X-ray because it provides probably more than 50% of the... It's a bit like this. The analogy would be like this. If you take your car for an inspection and the car mechanic, they definitely need to open up the bonnet to see really what's going on. He can't just walk around the car and say, this is the problem, while there's an engine problem that he has to lift the bonnet and look a bit closer. And an X-ray is a bit like lifting the bonnet to see really what's going on in the depth in the engine. Because without an X-ray, you can't really see anything. But you have to weigh it up because of the exposure. But with the digital X-ray system that I explained earlier, the exposure is probably only 10% of what it was 10 years ago, when you still had the little film in your mouth, which had to develop with chemicals in the darkroom. So the exposure was way higher at that time.
Right. And what about ozone dentistry? What's your opinion on ozone dentistry?
Well, ozone dentistry is a relatively new field. It's a fantastic thing to do with teeth, because you can somehow, in a non-chemical way, disinfect teeth. So that's a wonderful thing, but not everybody has that. And it's also a technique that needs to be learned, and not everybody can do that. But with all these new techniques that come out, if it's laser or ozone, it all has its limitations. Because basically dentistry is still dealing with trying to fix a broken tooth, and you can do it this way or that way. Yeah, like the old conventional ways. If you have a big decay in the tooth, you still need to drill it out, and you will not get around that, even with the most sophisticated technologies, like, for example, laser and stuff like that. Often I have the feeling that it raises the new techniques. They come out in a big way, and the newspapers are talking about, oh yeah, in times to come there will be a new technique and we can replant teeth, or there will be stem cells and we will regrow teeth and stuff like that. And they raise often expectations that are not realistic at this point in time. We don't know what will happen one day. Maybe we can do all these things, but see, the average patient has a problem with their teeth that needs to be attended to, and often the teeth is broken, yeah, if it has a big decay, and that can be fixed mechanically by putting a crown on it, or a big filling or something like that. And we will not get away from that sort of way of dealing with teeth and repairing teeth, even with ozone and stuff, and laser technologies and other things that might come out in times to come. So this is how I see it. Ozone is fantastic, laser, they all have their wonderful application, but it will not solve the fundamental problem that we have to deal with a broken tooth, for example, that needs to be fixed. And ozone might assist, laser technology might assist, but still we have to provide some sort of restoration to fix the tooth, which raises the question, what sort of materials are we using? And there's the old-fashioned way of doing mercury amalgam, which was always cheap, but it's super toxic. And now we have more modern materials, but they might also have their own issues, like composites, which is often BPA in it. Or there's zirconia and ceramics, but they still need to be glued with some sort of gluing material, which also might have some sort of issues that are not super healthy. But we have to do something. Gold, yeah. Many people in the past had gold, for example, to replace amalgam. Gold is a metal, which also raises issue. So there's always a compromise that we have to go through. And this is what people just have to take into account. If there's a tooth that is broken that needs to be fixed, we need to use materials that are not natural. We can't fix it any other way.
So have you ever seen people who have had a cavity and have fixed it themselves by stopping eating, stopping hot drinks, and just allowing it to regrow in a natural way?
Okay, good question. with dental decay, so what you're referring to is if there's a small hole, if they can regrow it with good nutrition and stuff like that. Yeah. Yes. So if you imagine a tooth, I mean, we are talking about a small area, but basically, if a tooth has a decay that starts kind of from the outside, and the decay does not go deep into the tooth is still vital because it has a vital core. It has a lymph flow. It has, this is hormonal regulated, the internal, there's a lymph flow that goes from the inside out. It starts in the stomach, goes from the inside out, and it's a bit like an inner toothbrush. But you need the right nutrition to have this inner toothbrush, the inner lymph flow going. And if you have that flowing, then the tooth can repair itself from the inside. So it actually, the nerve can build new tooth substance from the inside out. So if you imagine I'm the nerve, and this room is your tooth. So we are here, I'm the nerve in the center of the room, and I can build somehow hard substance from the inside to defend something that comes from the outside. But I need to be healthy. The nerve needs to be healthy, and there needs to be a healthy lymph flow. The lymph flow is dependent on the hormonal regulation of the hypothalamus and the parotid gland. But that only happens if you have the right nutrition. Otherwise, the lymph flow can be the other way around. What that means is that instead of a healthy inside-out flow, you have the tooth sucks in all the toxins from the outside in, and then you develop decay. Then the plaque, the bacteria from the outside, they can settle on the tooth. They they ferment the sugar, and they cause decalcification from the outside, and the hole develops. Now, if the nerve is still all right, then with the right nutrition and with the right brushing techniques, you can heal a cavity. It will probably not regrow, but you can arrest the decay that comes from the outside. It has its limitation, at least this is my experience. If the hole is really deep and it gets close to the nerve and the pain starts, then then you have really big parts of the tooth which are decomposing tissue. It's not nurtured from the inside out anymore. So I like to compare it, and Laura and I, we are always thinking about how can we explain things. So if you have dead tissue, like most of the part of the tooth is really decomposing decay, then all the best nutrition will not help it anymore. You will not get to it. It's a bit like, if you are diabetic and you have a gangrene tooth, I mean, that's the extreme case, but a foot that is gangrenous doesn't get blood supply anymore. And you cannot heal it anymore. If it's rotten tooth, you really have to get to healthy tissue where the blood supply is healing the remainder. And if you have, let's say, 70% of the tooth which is rotting away, basically, that's decay. It's tooth rot. That's the old expression for it. Then the blood supply and the lymph supply will not reach that anymore. So you really have to drill it out to get to healthy tissue, and then it can heal. But then you have a big hole in the tooth from the drilling, and you need to restore it with a dental restoration. Those are the things. So to answer your question, if you have a relatively small cavity, I have experienced people who said, I don't want restoration. And I said, well, great. We just monitor it. Every year we take an X-ray and see how you go with it, because the X-ray will show if the decay is growing or not. And if people do the right thing, right nutrition, right vitamins, vitamin K2, vitamin D, and fat-soluble vitamins, then they can arrest that. I've seen that with kids. Because the baby teeth, they rot away very quickly, but you don't necessarily need to restore them if they arrest the decay. And many parents, they changed the diet, and they did the right thing, followed Western price, for example, and they were able to arrest the decay. The teeth look really bad when you look at them, but the the dentin, which was formerly really kind of soft dentin, which is rotting dentin, has hardened up. They got older, these kids, and then they exfoliated the baby teeth at the normal age, and the permanent teeth were coming out.
And do you think that flossing is something that's important? Do you think actually brushing is as important as maybe the toothpaste manufacturers would like you to believe?
Good question. Because, see, it's like this. Our ancestors, they didn't have problems with their teeth. It all started with the agricultural revolution, or the industrial revolution. Anyway, where suddenly our food absolutely changed. So before that, we had normal jaws, normal teeth, crooked teeth or impacted wisdom teeth. They were not really an issue because we got the right nutrition, and so our faces and our jaws were forming normally and not crooked and too small, so that there was enough space for our teeth. At the same time, our oral microbiome was healthy, meaning we had all the bacteria in our mouth that were keeping each other in check. So the pathogens were there. Streptococcus mutans, for example, is the bacteria that is causing most of the problems with dental decay. But it had its ancestral buddies to keep it in check. Now, these days, our oral microbiome is a little bit out of balance, completely out of balance. And if we nurture or if we eat the wrong foods, then the bad guys take over. It's a bit like the terrain. The terrain these days is out of balance. So we have germs that then take over in a bad, out of balance terrain. And because of that, our oral microbiome is out of balance. Plaque with the wrong nutrition develops. In the past, our ancestors, they also had plaque, but it was a healthy plaque with all the bacteria and germs somehow in a balance that they supported each other. There was no bad guy that was taking over and causing havoc in our mouth. These days it's different. So we have, let's say we have an oral microbiome that is out of balance, and therefore the plaque that might establish on your teeth is harmful. And that's why it's so important to still brush our teeth and floss is so, but the main thing is that we brush our teeth and remove this plaque that might develop because our oral microbiome is out of balance and causes harm. It's still important to do that. And it's also important you ask the question with the floss. The toothbrush can clean the tooth from the outside and the chewing surface. But the dental floss or little toothbrushes, like these interdental brushes that look a little bit like a bottle brush, they go between teeth where the toothbrush doesn't go. Now, more than 60% of dental problems, they start between teeth. So it's a bit like this. They have one tooth next to it, they have a contact point. Now, the toothbrush goes here, chewing surface, outside, inside, nicely. But it doesn't go here in between teeth where more 2/3 of dental problems, they start between teeth. So you get a hole mostly in this spot and in this spot. And dental floss zips through this spot and cleans it. Now there was some announcement done recently that dental floss is not necessary or something like that. But my personal experience is it's very important. Dental floss is as important as the toothbrush. And still we need to brush our teeth because I do believe the oral microbiome these days in our Western civilization and civilization with our industrialized food is completely out of balance and doing harm to our teeth and gums. But let me just elaborate a little bit on this cleaning between teeth a little bit more, because when you get older and you start to develop gum disease, the dental floss is not the best choice to clean between teeth anymore, because suddenly these little brushes, they have a wider area to clean than dental floss alone, and they clean better once you have developed a little bit of gum issues. Dental floss is, in my opinion, not enough anymore.
What about using, say, colloidal silver as a mouthwash? Would that be beneficial?
Well, see, the thing is, with mouthwashes, there's, they market, for example, Listerine, yeah? And it all goes back to germ theory and terrain theory, and the oral microbiome, which is, if it's healthy, it's the healthy terrain. But if you start using mouthwash or colloidal silver, I'm not so familiar. I use colloidal silver myself, but to use it as a mouthwash, or if you use, for example, essential oils like tea tree oil, which is quite strong, what you're doing is you indiscriminately kill off everything. It's like nuking the oral microbiome. So if you take Listerine or something really strong, or even colloidal silver, which is also very bactericidal, so killing all the bacteria, you actually nuking the oral microbiome and you strip off everything that is there. I don't know how strong colloidal silver would be. It probably depends on the concentration, but I would not necessarily say that you should go for, of course not for Listerine, that's a chemical weapon, but also not necessarily for strong tea tree oil, which has kind of the same effect. You would like to target the bad guys, but you don't want to strip everything out of your mouth, the oral microbiome, because the oral microbiome actually feeds all the other microbiomes in your body. It feeds, there's a strong correlation between the lung microbiome, the oral microbiome, the gut microbiome, the nasal microbiome. So they all go hand in hand. And they are actually, the entry port is the mouth. So you start with the mouth, with the oral microbiome. You swallow, you breathe, and therefore you set seeds deeper into your system. Now, if you kill off everything in your mouth, then that has obviously consequences for the tract further down. So the question, what do you do? When you clean your teeth, it's way more important that you clean mechanically than chemically. Now, of course, there's a huge industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar annual industry to sell toothpastes and mouthwashes. But this is not the crucial part of having good oral hygiene. You need to mechanically remove, for example, the plaque that sits on your teeth. What I mean by that is you need to have the right brushing technique and clean properly between your teeth, because these chemicals, strong toothpaste and mouthwashes, they don't penetrate the plaque, for example, the biofilm properly, and you kill everything indiscriminately, and you don't want to do that. But if you take toothbrush properly and you clean along the gum lines nicely, I have a video also on my website which talks about how to brush teeth and gums properly. And this is the most crucial part. When I see my patients, I always teach them first how to do that properly, because most people get that wrong. I would say even 90% get it wrong to clean that. Yeah, and it's you just have to learn a particular technique, which is really nice, very easy to learn. Electric toothbrush is a wonderful thing because it makes life much easier than just doing it with a hand brush manually. I always like to compare it with see, if you have a big dinner and you have a huge load of dishes to do, you can do that by hand. You can put it in the dishwasher. The dishwasher is doing a nice job. If you have a dishwasher, you can do it by hand. The results might be the same, but in the long run, it's much more convenient to have a nice dishwasher. That's how and the toothbrush, these are little fancy machines. They don't cost the world. They are reliable and they last years on end, and they make your life much easier.